Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Kelly Beck. I'm chair of the Human Relations Diversity Board, and we thank you all for coming to join us for a very special session tonight. We have two amazing guest speakers with us tonight from the University of Central Florida. Kavita Sal and Catherine Varela are here to share a presentation with us on enhancing accessibility to build community. So with that, I will hand it over to our speakers. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Kelly. Hello. Hello. How are we doing? I see a few familiar faces. How are you? Good. My name is Kavita Sao, and I work at the University of Central Florida in Access and Community Engagement. I will have Catherine introduce herself, and then we will jumpstart this.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Catherine Varela. I work over at the Student Accessibility Services office at UCF. I am one of the accessibility consultants there. And I've been at UCF full-time for almost 8 years now, but I am an alumni as well. So in total, I've been around UCF for the last 13 years. So.
Yeah, I've been there a tiny bit longer than her. Like somewhere close to 20, but we're not talking about that. If y'all have been to any of my trainings before, you would remember that we start with our expectations. We want to be respectful, ask honest and open questions, allow space, listen, don't debate, correct, or interpret. Keep an open mind. We are all here to learn. Suspend judgment. Agree to disagree, and then speak your truth, so use I when you're talking, and then probably the most important one, and the one that I absolutely cannot guarantee, is to remember to maintain confidentiality. Whatever is said and shared in here in terms of stories and experiences belong to the people who shared it. If it's not your story, it's not your content to take out of here. How does that sound? We sound good? All right. Since this one is definitely not my specialty, I will hand it over to Catherine, and she will take from here.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Kavita. Can you all see me okay? I know I'm a little short down here. Wonderful. All right. So today we are going to be talking about enhancing accessibility to build community. So this presentation, we're going to kind of start very basic and do a quick little introduction on what a disability is, which seems a little obvious, but we're going to dig a little bit deeper. And when we dig a little bit deeper, we're going to kind of see the difference between the medical model of disability and the social model of disability. Then from there, we'll kind of talk about some best practices that can be done, specifically here within the city of Ocoee, that can kind of help enhance accessibility. And then from there, we'll kind of talk about why this is important and understanding why this is so significant and the impact that it has. All right. So typically, before I get into things, I kind of like to have a feel for who is in the room. So I'm not going to have you guys introduce yourselves, so don't worry about that. But if I can just have you guys, a few of you kind of share your affiliation with the city. Do we have some residents, business owners? You guys can kind of shout it out. Resident? Retiree? Wonderful. So a lot of residents. Any business owners? Yep, a couple. Awesome. Perfect. Thank you for taking time out of your busy days to come and listen. So, all right. So now, what is a disability? Again, seems very basic and it's pretty simple, straightforward, right? But under the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, they define a person with a disability as someone that has a physical or mental impairment that significantly impacts one or more major life activity, or they have record of this impairment, or they are regarded as having such impairment. Now, to address the elephant in the room, obviously, I am a prime example of this definition. I have a physical disability. I've had it since I was born, been in a wheelchair my entire life, was born unable to stand or walk, so I have a physical limitation myself. A lot more complicated things in the mix that I'm not going to get into, but Due to my physical limitations, I am not able to physically walk or stand, so as a result, I have to utilize a wheelchair. I have a record all over my medical records of my impairment, so I have records of such impairment, and usually when people see me, they are instantly regarding me as someone with a disability, primarily because they can see the wheelchair. So with this definition, one of the biggest things that we can see in a common factor is there's a lot of emphasis on the actual impairment. And this definition falls under what we call the medical model of disability. And so with the medical model of disability, there are some key characteristics. So the first is, and probably the most apparent one, is that it really focuses on the actual impairment and the condition that the individual has. It also attributes a disability directly to the condition or the impairment. Now, this is kind of hit or miss. For some people, yes, that is the case, but for other people, their disability may not be apparent every single moment of their lives. Someone that has PTSD or anxiety may only experience those symptoms when they're in specific environments or in specific crowds. And so they might be living their day-to-day just like anyone else, but in certain environments, their disability becomes more apparent. So that one is kind of hit or miss, but under the medical model, it basically says, like, you know, you have this condition, so you're a disabled person. There's this assumption that these people have to be fixed or cured in order to be considered normal in our society. And so this kind of causes a lot of that negative stereotypes and stigmas to arise. And as we've evolved in society, we kind of want to stay away from those negative stereotypes and stigmas. And so that's kind of where the social model came to light. And so to kind of best explain the social model, I have a little video that we're going to play.
We need to talk about disability. You might hear people say that disability is caused by barriers in society. But what does that actually mean? Well, think about this. If someone who uses a wheelchair can't get into a building because of some steps, is the barrier caused by the person using a wheelchair or by the design of the building? If a blind person can't read the timetable for a train, what's stopping them from getting the information they need? If a child with learning difficulties is struggling in class, is it the child's responsibility to learn in the way they are taught, or the teacher's responsibility to teach in the way that the child can understand? For years, society has viewed disability as a problem that belongs to the disabled person and said that we should focus on fixing that person's impairment.
The social model of disability says that disability results from the way society is organised, rather than by a person's impairment or difference.
There is no right or wrong way to be. We are all different. We are all unique, diverse individuals.
We need to remove the barriers that stop disabled people from participating in society fully, on an equal basis with everyone else. We need to design buildings so that everyone can access them.
We need to ensure information is accessible to everyone so we can all participate in public life.
And we need to ensure that every child has the opportunity to learn and grow into the best person they can be.
When barriers are removed, disabled people can and will be equal in society,
with control over their own lives.
Not to mention all the other groups who benefit from a more inclusive and accessible society.
It's time to talk about disability differently. It's time to build our places and spaces differently. It's time to change attitudes and realise that we are all different and unique, and that an inclusive society is a better society for everyone.
It's a cute little video, I thought. So with that information, we can see that when we kind of move away from the medical model and adopt more of that social model of disability and that perspective, we find that what the true definition of a person with a disability is the loss or limitation of opportunities to take part in society on an equal level with others due to those social and environmental factors. So it's not really solely defined by their impairment or the condition that they have. It's rather more so defined as the interaction between them and the environment that they're in. The other beautiful thing about the social model is that with this perspective, not only does it benefit the person that has the disability, but it truly benefits everyone as a whole. When we think of elderly folks that might use walkers or wheelchairs or scooters, or people that are pregnant or have little kids in strollers, having facilities that have ramps, it just makes it a little bit easier for everyone, not just individuals with disabilities. So some different types of disabilities that we usually see. The first is probably the most obvious one that most people think about when they hear the word disability is the physical disability. Now, these are your people that have mobility devices like wheelchairs, scooters, walkers. If they have prosthetic limbs, if they don't have full function of certain parts of their bodies, like quadriplegics, etc. The one that we see probably the most in our world at UCF, working in accessibility, we do see a lot of invisible disabilities. And these are our average students that when you look at them, you're just like, that's just a regular 18, 19, 20-year-old college student. But when you actually sit down and have a conversation with them, they have these conditions like ADHD, anxiety, depression, OCD, autism spectrum disorder, learning disabilities, chronic illnesses. The list kind of goes on and on with this one. So oftentimes we don't always know what people are experiencing because on the outside, they look perfectly fine, but internally a lot of their conditions are being impacted more internally than externally. We also have individuals that are blind or low vision, deaf or hard of hearing, and those that have temporary disabilities like injuries and illnesses. Now, when I say illnesses, I'm not talking about the cold or the flu. These are kind of those temporary illnesses that have some kind of treatment and cure, and it's not fully lifelong. So we're going to do a little activity. So I just want you to kind of close your eyes. Some of you, I know a lot of you said you were residents. Some of you are business owners. So I want you to visualize, if you're a business owner, envision your place of work, your business. If you're a resident, you can think of maybe some places that you visit on a regular basis. That could be your doctor's office. That could be a local restaurant or market. All right. I want you to visualize every aspect of this building. So think about the exterior, the interior, the hallways, the restrooms, the common spaces. If you have an office, think about your office space, okay? Think about the entryways, the exits, sidewalks, literally every part. Are we thinking about it? Okay. I'll be quick so we don't fall asleep. All right, now envision someone with a visible disability coming into this space, or if we want to make it obvious, envision I come into this space. What are some of those kind of initial feelings or thoughts or questions that might kind of immediately pop up in your head when you see this person coming into this space? Anybody want to share? You can open your eyes, by the way. Sorry. Kavita's gonna come run. Well, maybe not run, but.
So I'm president of my community's HOA. And so what I was thinking about is how do we have accessibility set up within our community with our amenities, the playground, the pool, the parking area near the mailboxes, and do we truly have a space that's accessible? And there are some things we've done, but there are definitely areas that I can immediately see room for improvement.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
I'm going to jump in real quickly. When Kelly reached out about us doing this, and I reached out to Kat. My first thought was, is Catherine going to be able to use the computer? And I think I might have said to her that the computer is higher, so I don't think you'll be able to reach it. So that's one of the things that came to my mind, and it was the reason why I was like, well, she can handle it by herself, but I'll be there to run the system for her.
We have a hand.
I think that many times when we see a disabled individual, unconsciously it brings out that unconscious bias within us. And without really putting forth effort to generate any positive thoughts, we start formulating courses of action
Yes, sir.
or reaction.
Now, if you don't mind sharing, what are maybe some of those reactive thoughts or actions that might happen?
Well, I can only refer as an individual. I mean, I cannot speak on behalf of what anyone else might think, but my first thought would be, how can I, am I still active?
Did it turn off? Does this one still works?
Yeah, they're recording it, so.
I think, from my point of view, my first instinctive response, a reaction would be, how do I conduct myself with that individual compared to a normal exchange between someone who doesn't have a disability? And from there, do I want to not demonstrate any form of behavior that is going to convey to the individual my disparity or any type of disparity that I might have because of our physical differences. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but I think you get the gesture of where I am.
Hey, it's okay. I think I'm about 1,000 and something away from my steps.
Hi, story sharing time. I've always considered myself very open-minded on all cases, and that was when I was young. And about 30 years ago, a friend of mine, a very intelligent engineer who was the main designer of the penguin encounter out at SeaWorld, and I were at an outing together. I had never realized at that time, since we hardly talked, we just kind of hung out, that he stuttered. And I found myself, he would hit, and stop, and I would fill in the word, thinking I was being helpful. And pretty much quit hanging with me for a while, so I asked what the problem was, and he said, "You don't understand. I don't need you to do my life. I need you just to be there and listen." And learned a very valuable lesson from him. So I think I'm more open-minded.
Well, thank you both for sharing. So a lot of times now, and I'm very open about my disability. I've been disabled my entire life. So that's why it's easy for me to just say, throw me in, coach, I will be the guinea pig. So oftentimes, when we see someone subconsciously, kind of what you were mentioning, is there's a lot of questions that pop up, right? You see the person and you want to help them. You want to finish their sentences. So rather than kind of stopping and just taking a second and really analyzing it, there's a lot of questions that immediately pop up in our heads. So the first thing is always, how can I help them, right? Or do they need any help? Because again, kind of thinking back to that medical model, thinking that this person needs to be fixed or cured, or they need assistance all the time. Can they navigate a space okay? Or is the space accessible enough for them? Kind of what Kavita shared when she asked me to help her with this presentation. She was thinking about the space here and would it be accessible for me? If you have an office or if you meet with clients or customers or have historically, is your office space accessible, or maybe do you need to meet somewhere else? Will you say something that will offend them? Are you using the right terminology? And a common one that I get a lot is, am I staring too much? Because people see the wheelchair and they get very stuck on it. So those are just some initial questions that typically arise. But if we're looking at individuals with disabilities, kind of like, everyone else around in this room, you and myself, why do you feel like there's this natural instinct to treat them differently? Or why do you think there is this sudden sense of panic or uncertainty that arises when you see this person? You guys don't have to share, you can just think about it. If you want to share, you can. I think I saw you guys get excited about the picture.
Well, she used to work at Technical College, I said, yeah. And I also worked in Magnolia Exceptional Ed. And it was, I can truthfully say that my mother brought me up, teaching me that children are different. Because I had a neighbor who, I went to my mom, I said, Jimmy's brother, there's something wrong with him. And my mom said, you're old enough to understand there are different children. There are different children, and that's the way I was raised. And then I ended up going to work at Magnolia Exceptional Ed, who is a handicapped school for high functioning and low functioning. So I've worked in all fields, so I can relate. So.
Yeah, and so that's a picture of a UCF student. She actually got her Zumba certification, so she got a job at the campus rec facility teaching Zumba classes. And people loved her class just because she's so happy all the time. So yeah, there's always kind of a little bit of uncertainty and always this little sense of panic, right? Because you want to make sure you're doing the right thing. And this happens a lot of times because society doesn't really teach us how to truly interact with these individuals until you yourself are in this position or someone close to you is, or you're working directly with kids or young adults that have disabilities and you're seeing how society is treating them. In our society here, we don't have a lot of representation of people with disabilities, truly people with disabilities, right? There's a lot of shows and movies that have come out. Oftentimes, those are able-bodied actors or actresses that are portraying someone with a disability. So that representation is kind of there, but also kind of not. So again, it's one of those things that you really don't know what to do until someone close to you either has a disability or you yourself are experiencing one, and you're kind of trying to navigate through society. The other part of it, and we were kind of talking about this before the session started, a lot of facilities and buildings are older, and so they may have been built prior to any accessibility laws or mandates, and those are actually really hard to get, like the permits to fix them up to make them ADA accessible. And so there's also that layer of it too. So with this, we can kind of see that what really impacts a lot of people with disabilities is the actual environment itself. So now that we know all of this, how can we, you all as residents of Ocoee and business owners of here in the city of Ocoee, how can we make our environments more accessible so that way we can strengthen that sense of community and belonging when it comes to individuals with disabilities? So some of the best practices The first thing is, remain calm and don't panic, right? You want to make sure that you're speaking directly with the individual at all times, and ensuring that you are giving them that attention, that respect that they deserve. Now, oftentimes people with disabilities might be with a friend, a family member, their husband, their wife, whoever, and a very common experience for me personally is when I go to restaurants with my husband, and they'll turn to him and say like, oh, is she going to transfer or stay in her chair? And he'll just kind of stare at me, and I'll be like, oh, I'm going to stay in my chair. So instead of that person directly asking me that question, they'll go to someone else. And that's kind of a very common thing that we often see. And so one of the best things to do is just talk to that person first. And then if you're talking to them and you see that there's, okay, maybe a communication barrier or they're not able to communicate effectively, then that person that's with them can answer that question. But it's still important to still remain that eye contact with that person so you know they're still kind of included in that conversation. The next thing is always asking how you can be of assistance. Right? That's one of the things that oftentimes people want to react versus like stop, take a moment and ask like, hey, how can I help you? And really giving them the assistance as it's being asked, because you want to be very careful. I've seen situations where I've had friends that their condition, their bones are slightly a little bit more sensitive or fragile, and like someone will try to come and like pick them up. So you want to be very careful that if you're going to offer assistance, do it the way it's asked and requested, because you can potentially cause more harm than good for the individual. And if the person ever says like, no, I'm okay, thank you, just say like, all right, if there is anything that you need, just be that point of contact person so that way they can reach out to you if there is anything that happens. Now, if someone does raise a concern, the best thing to do is ask, can you describe the barrier you're experiencing, or what can I do to make this experience better? Not only does that allow that person to kind of tell you exactly what's going on or what would make that experience better for them, but it kind of makes them feel like they are being heard and their opinions are being respected. So kind of like with the community stuff, like if you're out there and someone is struggling, you can ask them like, hey, if we were to do something, how do you think we could make this space more accessible? It's best to always go to that person because they're living that day-to-day life. Now, of course, their experience it doesn't mean it's going to be the same experience for every person, either in a wheelchair or with that similar disability, but at least it kind of gets those gears running in your brain of like how you can possibly make things more accessible. And if it's not an urgent need, or if logistically it doesn't make sense to do it in that moment, obviously if it's something that you can do and it's an easy fix, do it right away. Don't let that person, leave them hanging. But if it's something that's not an urgent need, it's good to at least write it down and kind of come back to it at another time. So the best thing you can honestly do, I don't know if you guys have a lot of community events. I think I saw, there's a lot of food trucks in the back. And I think on Instagram, I saw you guys have a little market that happens every so often. So I'm sure there's a lot of planning that goes into play with these types of events and any kind of community event. So when we proactively think about accessibility within that planning phase, it actually helps prevent a lot of those kind of incidents or concerns that happen in the moment. So kind of making sure you prepare alternative formats of things. So if you have flyers or menus or just like little giveaways, you want to make sure there's an electronic version available, possibly for someone who is blind or low vision that may need to use a screen reader to access that content. And I'll talk a little bit more about that stuff in the next slide, but that's kind of the gist of that. Ensuring designated accessible spaces are available. Now, I'm not just talking about parking. I'm talking about, like in a room like this, we have, all these chairs set up. So possibly even allowing the first row or two to be for individuals that might have wheelchairs, kind of leaving that open space. If someone is deaf or hard of hearing and there's an interpreter, allowing them to sit in a space close to where they can see the interpreter. Also, I know it's a little bit harder with outside events, but having maybe like sensory sensitivity spaces where there's still activities happening, but it's maybe a little bit away from the main crowd, or like if there's a DJ blasting music, kind of moving it a little bit to the side. I know I'm young, but I don't like really loud music. It bothers me. So I like to find I like to hear it, but not have it like blaring in my ears. So I like to kind of move to the side a little, but still feel like I'm part of the event that's happening. Arranging interpreters or having accurate captions. Some people post stuff on social media and they just use the auto-generated captions. For people that are deaf or hard of hearing, automatic captions are not accurate and do spew a lot of misinformation. So ensuring that if you are creating your own content, you are going in and updating those captions to make sure they have the correct spelling, grammar, punctuation, all that stuff. Testing all of the visual and audio equipment to make sure it sounds clear and that everyone can hear from any point of the room is important. Having any flash warnings or trigger warnings is really big, especially for people with PTSD or that have some kind of seizure disorder like epilepsy. You want to make sure you don't want people to have an incident during an event. So ensuring that any kind of trigger warning is listed. Having adequate spaces between tables and chairs, and just planning for those accessible routes and alternative entrances if needed. So if you're part of a group or something that you're planning an event for the public, sometimes it's actually a good idea to have either an email address or a link to a survey where if there are people attending that need accessible like an accommodation or an accessible feature, it gives them an opportunity to fill that out ahead of time. That's always a good idea as well. Now with creating accessible resources, again, having digital versions of any paper format, but also having physical formats of any digital stuff as well. So kind of going vice versa. Using clear and readable fonts and colors, ensuring all the text is typed out. So I know a lot of websites will often put like images with a lot of text on there. If someone who is blind or low vision is using a screen reader accessing your page or your Instagram stuff or Facebook, the stuff that's on the image is not going to be read by the screen reader. So ensuring that if there is important content on the image itself, it's written out somewhere so that way that screen reader can pick it up. So a lot of people use Canva. Canva will save stuff as an image, so that's a big one to kind of keep in mind. So again, if you have important information, make sure it's all being typed out. And then the last thing with this part is ensuring that you're debriefing. We go to the next slide. Doing a debrief, so kind of just thinking about, what went well, what didn't go well. This is something that a lot of people can do either by themselves or with their team, and kind of considering some stuff that can be done to better support these individuals in the future. And then also, importantly, taking action for what has been learned as a result. So that is kind of the gist of the information. Now I can really go on and on about all the different possibilities, but I know we only have so much time. So we're going to do a little activity. It's not extensive at all. We're going to do it as a larger group. I do have physical formats of this because I know it's kind of hard to see. So if anybody wants like a physical sheet of paper, I made about 10 copies, so I can pass it around. But I'm basically going to go over 3 scenarios, and there's a couple questions that we'll answer for each scenario. I promise it's not difficult at all. It's pretty easy. So Kavita will pass some of those around. So if you want one, you can raise your hand. But again, it's going to be on the TV screen, so it's okay. So those that have the paper, you kind of have a little cheat sheet, I guess, because you're seeing it before everyone else. All right, so some of the questions that we're going to kind of talk through with each of the scenarios is kind of what are those initial thoughts or questions or hesitations that come up right away? How would you respond in the situation? What alternative accommodations can be done to support the individual? And what proactive steps can be done to prevent the situation? And again, I know some of you have the paper, some of you don't. I'll read through the questions as we go through them. All right, so the first scenario is a customer who is blind enters a restaurant and requests an accessible format of the menu. Let's start with what are some initial thoughts, questions, or hesitations? Yeah, seeing if there's a Braille menu that they can read. What if they don't read Braille? You want to go first?
Most of the restaurant menus are online now, so you can bring it up online and just have it read it to them.
Yeah. What if it's not readable by a screen reader?
I mean, it would be a voice. I mean, the software will just read it to you.
What if it's not reading it correctly?
You need to talk to your IT.
Yeah, so asking them what kind of format of a menu they need, that's a good start. Now, what if you don't have that format? And they really want to eat at this restaurant?
Would you have the waitress to read it?
There you
Read
go.
it to them?
Yeah. Yeah, so that is an option, having the staff read it. You want to?
Ask the person, what are your preferences?
Yeah,
If we don't ask them, we make assumptions.
that's correct. I don't know if you guys heard, she said, ask them what their preferences are, because we don't want to make assumptions, right? So what can be done proactively to maybe avoid or kind of manage or handle a situation like this a little easier?
Can contact the restaurant ahead of time and ask what services they do provide. And if they don't have a lot of things, we'll say, can we come up with something?
Yeah.
You know, brainstorm together.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Anyone else want to share? Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I hate microphones.
I know, it's okay. So, yeah, do you own a restaurant? No? Okay. So definitely, if you did own a restaurant, kind of taking the time to create those formats that are accessible with the screen reader. A lot of times that, anybody can test those things out. There's a lot of extensions that can be added onto Google Chrome or Explorer, I don't know, Firefox, whatever people use nowadays, that will read it. So if you turn it on and it's not reading it correctly and you own a business, then you can kind of work either with IT or Google some videos that can help you create an accessible format. Right, awesome. So again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just kind of getting your brain thinking. We can go on to the next scenario. So the next one is actually one that I kind of encounter pretty often, sometimes. So it's a customer in a wheelchair enters a retail space where the tables, shelves, and furniture are closely arranged, making it very challenging to navigate the space. What are some initial thoughts, questions, or hesitations? Yeah. You're saying from like the person's perspective, right? Going, maybe they'll just leave and turn around and say, forget this place, I'll find a different
Well, I
place.
usually, like, I wouldn't go back. I'd probably
Oh.
figure out a way when I was there,
Yeah.
so I'm not disturbing who I'm with.
Mm-hmm.
But then I would roll that out a place that feels accessible.
Yeah. I've done that a lot. Go in there once and, all right, it's not accessible for
I
me.
brought a very good friend a few weeks ago that the bar had a happy hour deal for tables brought on.
Mm-hmm.
And they wouldn't allow him to order the specials, even though the tables that were his height were right next to that area. But they wouldn't, like, allow him to order
Yeah.
off the specials, because they're like, well, that's only for the bar area. But they only had high tables.
Yeah. So is that really fair or like fair to that individual? Because it's like they want to be there, but they physically cannot because the restaurant, the bar is kind of, the way it's designed, it's kind of excluding them from participating in that
I
way.
think that, like, times when I've been in a wheelchair from time to time, you can become hyper aware that you're putting other people out. So you're not gonna maybe even give the restaurant or place the benefit of, I don't wanna say complaining, but of letting them know what your issues are, because you don't wanna feel like you're putting everybody else out that you're with, you know?
Yeah. For sure. Thank you for sharing that. So now from a different perspective, right? Let's say like now you're the owner of this restaurant or this retail space. Like what can be done proactively probably to ensure that anyone that comes through that space can participate?
Talk to the people.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Or even, I don't know if anyone else was gonna share. Oh, yeah. Or do we have another one, Kavita? Are we good? Okay.
Aim the mic at me, you'll pick it up.
Can use mine.
He's doing this on purpose. He's really trying to get me to my steps.
The short of it is, as an owner of a business, you have to meet the Florida Accessibility Code when you constructed your restaurant. And you're also, once you do, build it correctly, you have to maintain that. So the reaction, my wife walks with a walker, and she has no problem pushing it right into chairs and such, because if people aren't smart enough, then she doesn't have any problem with that. And I'm there to make sure they don't. But the short of it is, the law's out there to protect people and to help them achieve these accessibility. And to be honest, a restaurant, built within the past 15 years, they're illegal if it's not accessible.
I think just learn from your mistakes too, right? If you see someone come in, they're uncomfortable, take the time that you can to resolve that situation. Put in steps.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even trying to do that while they're there. But if you're seeing, that a lot of people are kind of struggling to get in between things and racks and shelves, maybe there's a little bit of a problem, right? And so it's a good idea to maybe clear the space a little bit. Now, I know they're probably trying to sell as much as they can as a business owner, right? There's that business perspective too, but you want these people, your customers, to come back, right? So if someone's coming in and they're not able to easily navigate that space, they're not going to come back. And they're going to probably tell other friends or people that they know, hey, yeah, I went there, it's a cool place, but I couldn't even really enjoy it because I couldn't like navigate, and that might deter some people from attending or going there also. Great. And then the last scenario here is a patron attends a city event and confides in you that they have severe anxiety and PTSD and are on the verge of having a panic attack. What can be done, or what are some thoughts? Is that, oh,
So I actually dealt with this a couple times when I was a teacher and dealing with students that had panic disorders. And part of it was helping them get to a space where they could calm down, where whatever the stimulant was that was causing them to react, help them avoid that. But it was also about giving them a little bit of privacy. Nobody wants to be the center of attention whenever they're feeling very vulnerable. And so providing that space for them to decompress a little bit and feel safe, but also have that privacy was really important.
is it? Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yes. Mhm. Yeah. Right. Wonderful. Oh, now it wants to work. So yeah, a lot of great thoughts. So a big thing is, wanting to get that person away into a safer space, probably something with not as much like noise, not as much people, kind of drawing that tension away from them, because again, that extra attention is just going to make their anxiety worse. So another good thing is possibly even providing sensory sensitivity stuff. Usually for larger events that are open to the public, a lot of people might have their own headphones. We see that a lot at UCF, students walking around now with their headphones. And a lot of it is a sensory issue, kind of dealing with that anxiety and that nerves being around so many people on such a large campus. And so even if noise canceling headphones are pretty expensive, but they do sell like big boxes of the foam earplugs. Some people can handle that. So if you even have that available at some events, that might be something that's useful. So just to kind of wrap all this together, I know it's a lot of information, but there really is a lot of benefit when we kind of look at ways to improve accessibility to kind of help contribute to that sense of a strong community, especially with including everybody, right? We want to make sure everyone in our cities, in our community, want to come out to these spaces and experience the city just like everyone else. I'm sure many of you have lived here for a long time. I've lived in Orlando since 2001. My parents moved over here when I was 7. So I've seen Orlando grow, and it's such a beautiful thing to witness firsthand. And so one of my favorite things to do with my husband is go to a lot of local events, a lot of food trucks. We're fans of food trucks. We almost go weekly. But really exploring those small businesses that truly make our cities what they are. And it's such a beautiful thing too, especially working at such a large university. I get to meet students from all over, not just Florida, but all over the US, even other countries. And so when they come and I get to meet with them, I like to kind of get to know them a little bit, see what they like to do. It gives me an opportunity to say like, hey, I checked out this place, or I went to this event and it was accessible. It was very friendly. They had music, but it was at a decent like noise level. It wasn't crazy or anything like that. You should go check it out. And so that kind of helps encourage people to visit our cities, right, and visit these places. And, maybe one day want to stay and raise their families here. Maybe they'll find their partners. So it definitely is a good way to kind of help attract people into our cities and our businesses. And it definitely allows them to feel, especially if it's a situation where maybe someone's not having a good experience and you're talking with them and you're actually actively making changes to make your events or your facilities better. It makes them feel valued and heard and truly a part of something. So that is basically everything. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Thoughts? Okay.
But would just be curious, again, probably having never been there,
Mm-hmm.
what would be some of your just immediate reactions or some ways to make it more accessible? Just make it accessible in general. Again,
Yeah.
knowing what they
Yeah. So a big thing, I can only speak for myself, obviously, but for me and my own personal experience, when I'm kind of seeing an event be advertised or be talked about, if it's something that's happened before, I try to kind of Google old images and videos and stuff, primarily looking at the location. As someone in a wheelchair, location is a big thing. I am not a fan of grass, so if the whole thing is on grass, I am not going. That's just straight up. If parking is a nightmare, I am not going. So kind of thinking about like parking spaces. I know parking, especially in certain parts of towns, it's very difficult. For example, my husband and I, we have season tickets to Orlando City, and the city, that downtown area, they use a lot of gravel and people's yards and stuff. So we found a paved lot that we kind of swear by. But if that lot is closed, it kind of messes things up for us. So parking is always a big thing. So ensuring paved parking preferably. Again, I can only speak about myself having a wheelchair, but that doesn't just benefit people with wheelchairs, it benefits walkers, strollers, that kind of stuff. But, and then kind of having maybe with music festivals, often it's really, really loud. So maybe having like a designated area that's possibly, I don't want to say that it's reserved because you don't want to exclude people, but have it to where if people are a little bit more sensitive to noises, there is a universal symbol for a sensitivity area. So if you even have that picture set up, most people will kind of recognize it and be like, okay, this is my safe space. So, but yeah, those are just my initial first thoughts without knowing too much. Anything else? All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Well, I will be here for a couple extra minutes, and I think we are done. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.